We are so thankful and blessed to be talking to Dr. Maria Fee right now in an interview. I am in Columbus, Ohio. Dr. Fee, where are you at the moment?
I'm in Queens, New York.
Yeah, it's a sunshiny day there.
It is a beautiful day. I'm looking at all these flowering trees out my window. It's spring.
Yeah, same here. Well, we are excited to chat with you today. You are an educator and an artist and a theologian with a PhD in theology and culture from Fuller. Wow, I'll just start with that. I was saying earlier that I know a lot of people with doctorates and a lot of people with MFAs, but very few, and maybe just you, who has an MFA and a doctorate. So tell us a little bit about those three areas of your life and what do you enjoy doing? And I like this question. Maybe it's a little bit cheesy, but what are you doing when you feel most alive? So we'll start with that.
What am I doing when I feel most alive?
Mhm.
I'm either making something or I'm appreciating something that someone else has made. That's when I
Yes.
feel most alive. And usually that is the form of art, or I'd like to just encompass that whole thing, that area of making with the aesthetic, with the poetic. And so that's when I feel most alive.
Yeah.
And of course, when the divine, that's giving space for the divine to show up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yes.
what is your MFA in and your doctorate and how do those work together for you?
Okay, so first was the MFA in painting, long, long time ago. Became a Christian, and then I had this burning question: why is it that the experiences, this aliveness that I'm feeling in when I'm under the poetic, right?
Hmm.
The spell of the poetic. Why is that different than the same thing happens when I'm close to God? And why is there no language for that within my religious community? Why are those two mutual exclusives? And so that's why I went back and I got an master's of arts in theological studies and MA in theology, just to figure out, just to get some basic theological training.
Hmm.
And I started working for an arts ministry, and all that just didn't resolve my questioning. Actually, posed more questions, and that's why I went back to get my PhD in theology and culture. So the
Yeah.
culture part for me is art. So it's doing, combining or conjoining the theological reflection with artistic reflection.
Yeah. I love that. I've always heard that people learn best when they have a burning question that they really want to be answered. And so you fit that bill perfectly.
Yes, and that's what artists are doing. They're investigating, they're exploring, they're asking the
Mhm.
question, why not, what if?
Yeah.
So the theology does that, art does
Yes.
that. So I'm
Yes.
not sure why those two things are not always being utilized together.
Yeah. Well, before we dive any deeper into that, which we could talk about for a long time,
Mhm.
Dr. Fee, you are connected with Spark and Echo Arts in the past as a commissioned artist, but now also as a board member. And
Yes.
so, can you just quickly tell us about how did you find out about Spark and Echo Arts and why did you decide to become a board member?
Oh, I got connected with Spark and Echo more than a decade ago when Emily and Jonathan were just, I think at that time they were getting their nonprofit. I don't even remember where they were at what stage, but it was pretty early.
Yeah.
And my colleague, Kenyon Adams, and myself, we were leading an arts ministry up in a pretty large church in New York City.
Hmm.
And so we had a lovely lunch with Emily and Jonathan. And that's when I first became acquainted with them. But even as a professor, doing theology and art courses, I would always steer my students to what Spark and Echo was doing as a model and also as a platform for their own um, theological, you know, ins- introspection or
Hmm.
examination or exploration.
Yeah. Great. So then, as a board member, how long have you been a board member?
Very, very into like a month. Feels
Oh,
like
yeah. Okay.
I just got on board as a board
Okay.
member. Yes.
But
So
you don't become a board member without believing in what the organization's doing. Tell us about that. What do you like about it, and what would you like to see move forward?
oh, okay. I have worked in several Christian institutions,
Mhm.
mainly educational ones, adjunct teaching, uh, whatever, and churches. And for myself personally, I'm a Protestant, so I've witnessed a faith with the propensity to be based on head knowledge or conforming of the will, and it being an individual piety. What is really neat, and those are fine, I guess, but what is really needed are places to experience faith formation, not to
Mhm.
know about faith, but to experience it, to have an encounter with God and with one another. And so art can totally navigate these transactions, these divine human to place interactions. And so that's what motivates me to be on the board is that Spark and Echo invests in artists who are creating these kind of poetic spaces
Mm.
to reflect and 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 to enter into the narrative, into the biblical narrative.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, we are twice a year in the midst of a fundraising campaign, and so that's another place we are at the moment, looking ahead at late spring and the summer. Um, you believe in what we're doing. What are some reasons for people to contribute? What are reasons for people to help us financially to reach some of these goals that you're talking about?
Sure, more than ever, right now, we need the kind of spaces that art provides.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about actual physical, tangible places, but also the kind of internal rooms within us where the poetic reaches in and connects us to our souls, connects us to the souls of others, connects us to God, to the divine, connects us to the world that God created. And so yes, we need what artists um, can usher us into.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Good, good, good. Um, what do you like about being a board member? Sometimes being being a board member to the average person could sound boring or,
Yeah.
like a job to do. What do you like about it?
I'm going to be selfish about it. I mean, in a way, it gives me a platform to practice what I've been studying and doing, and that experience and that wisdom or that kind of perspective, as you will, now can be exercised, and that's why um, I I want to be on the board. I like to be on the board, and I think yeah. So that's my main reason is to share, to be a part of a community that cares about the same things that I care about. So
Yeah.
that's really valuable.
The doing of it. It's not
The
just a philosophy, it's part of your life now in action.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Well, I promised I would do a little quick speed round just to get to know you in a different way, Dr. Fee. I'm going to ask some really quick questions. I'm limiting you to one word. If you can give a one-word answer, here we go with your favorite sweet treat.
Uh,
What do you like?
I'm really into dates lately.
Sweet, nice. Yeah.
They're really sweet.
I imagine you've been to a lot of museums in your life. Name a
Mhm.
favorite. What's a favorite museum of yours?
Well, sorry, my dissertation topic is Theaster Gates. So he set up this cultural space in Chicago. So if you're in Chicago, please go to Stony Island Arts Bank in Greater Grand Crossings in south side of Chicago.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the basis of a book that you've written. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Theaster Gates is my dissertation subject, but through his artworks, I kind of construct a theology of hospitality. So by
Oh,
looking at his work and what he's been doing, he helps us to address God as being hospitable and
yeah.
and therefore we should follow through also on these acts of stewardship and care and reviving people,
Yeah,
places, things.
that's beautiful. We'll come back to that. And wait, back to my list. A place you want to visit that you haven't been yet.
I just moved back to New York, to the East Coast. I have yet to go to Beacon DIA, and that is on my list to do, spend a day, go up there and look at the art up there.
Nice. And a favorite place that you have been to, maybe somewhere you go back to.
Yeah, the Metropolitan Museum of Art is one of, yeah, you can go and go and go and see new things every single time.
Yeah, I had the same issue with the Institute of Art in Chicago. So every time I went,
Yes,
something beautiful and new.
yes.
And favorite biblical character.
Hagar, Denise Williams' account of Hagar in Sisters in the Wilderness, remarkable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. Well, getting back to the bigger picture, just about you as an artist, what's the first time that you thought of yourself as an artist? Which in my case took a long time. I would say maybe I was 38 years old when that's the point I got an MFA, and I thought I had the confidence to utter the words, "I am an artist." But for you, what was the first time you thought of yourself as an artist?
What you're saying hits me as well, is that there's the creativity that or the creative investigation stuff that I always love doing. I can remember making mud pies. Is that the first time that I thought I was an artist? Maybe when my kindergarten teacher hung up an image that I made of our dentist. Back then, we had dentists in schools.
Oh yeah.
Was I an artist then? Did I think of myself as an artist? And I really did struggle, even after an MFA, of am I an artist? Because I'm not showing. I don't have a dealer. I'm not teaching art at a university level. Those were the gates at the time of what it means to be an artist. So I've had to grow into my belief as an artist. It took a long time, probably longer than 38 years old. I had to broaden the definition of what it means to be an artist.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, for sure. We're going to look at a piece of art that you've created. I think that people are interested in the idea of, like, what is the process? When you work with Spark and Echo, do you read a passage and an idea comes to you, and then you put that idea down on paper with whatever medium. I know it's not that simple, right? That's certainly not that linear. But I'm going to add this to our stream here for just a moment. And you created this some time ago, right?
Oh yeah, a long time ago, more than a decade ago. Gosh, that's probably 2010 that I created that.
Yeah.
Painting, when I was still painting. I'm doing more 3D work now. Okay, to your question of the process, do you find a
Yeah, for Spark and Echo, of course you can choose a passage, but maybe, maybe you already have an idea for a passage, or maybe you read through the available passages and something comes to you. Do you remember how it went for you for this?
Sure. Well, here's the thing. I'm making things gives me the space for my head to ruminate. And so the things that I'm ruminating on could be multiple. But theologically, at that time, I was really wrestling with this idea of the one and the many. How could we be one body, yet each one of us are particular? And so I was really struggling with how, at the time, as an evangelical, the many meant cookie cutter. We all have to look the same. The one meant that we all had to be the same, think the same, look the same, sound the same. And so my paintings were a way of allowing for diversity amid plurality. And the image of one and the many allowed me to do that. And so Paul talks about that, Paul's body life that he talks about in Corinthians, and he expands on that. We need evangelists, we need teachers, we need, the prophetic. And so in order to be one body with many different parts. So those are the things that were going on in my head as I was making this body of work. And so
Yeah.
this is what the visual manifestation of all those ideas. Now, sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just playing. And
Mm-hmm.
in the studio, I'm making work, and I might hear a lecture or read something, and I'm like, that's what I was struggling with. The work kind of went ahead of me to show me something that I was striving towards, if you can understand that. But
Yeah.
so sometimes the work was prophetic in that it was moving ahead of me
Right.
before my thoughts. It was pre-verbal.
Well, I know it's it's a possibly dangerous question to ask an artist to explain their art. I understand that, but do you mind if we're looking at this image together?
Mhm.
It's symbolic for some reasons, for sure. Can you go a little bit down that road and help us frame
Sure.
what you're thinking?
So yeah, the circular motif, the organic nature, all those the circles are organic. They represent the organic. Organic means fluidity and flexibility, growth. So they all have those connotations. But the circle, for me, in my mind, also represented a body. The one, and I love how it with paint, because of the plasticity of paint and the movement, and you can rub out or you can paint over, how the one in the that's always it's not fixed, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
transform it could get nudged here, formally on the flat surface. And so I love the idea of working and reworking a painting, the
Yeah.
process of it. And
Right.
so that is also representative of how we live in community life, that it isn't simple, that it is rough. So all these things are at play through the visual, and through the concept and the form kind of meet together to kind of collide with these ideas.
Yeah. The color palette is so vibrant. I'll just ask one last question about that.
Sure.
The colors that you chose, and how do they fit with this spiritual truth?
Uh, well, maybe they fit more with my personality.
Hmm.
I think I allow myself to be really playful when I can play when I'm an artist. That's not necessarily true in my real life. Like my family says I don't have a sense of humor because I'm always so serious. And so I think for me, the color is one way of representing that kind of joy,
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of strain and reaching and work, and the joy comes out of a lot of pain. And so I think for me, it's really important to have that, like the dripping, the mess is part of play. And so the toning, the intensity of the colors are really important. Yeah, it's hard for me to get rid of the color. I love it because
Oh, I love, yes, the color is so
yeah.
vibrant and beautiful, and speaks to exactly what you're talking about. That's beautiful. All right. I'm going to switch that back out of the stream and just ask you some of your influences. Like, how did you, maybe even now, so you've transitioned a little bit from painting into, um, I'll call it more 3D work, or
Right, right.
yeah. How did you make that transition, and who's been an influence in your life for that?
Sure. Uh, I made the transition basically because I am an educator and a theologian. I have very little time to have a wide block of time to make art, and a painter really needs that wide amount. That needs that big chunk of time to respond and to do the process, right? So I didn't have that luxury. So I had to shift into the collage mode, and I worked on paper. And so this allowed me to do little parts 15 minutes here, an hour here, 4 hours here. It allowed me to kind of break up those time limits so that I can build things instead and construct things. So that's one reason I went into the 3D. But I also found that I loved layering and through paint. I love seeing the previous iterations of the painting come through. And so I felt like that had space in a way.
Mhm.
And how could I make that? So I started making that space for real. And the paper allowed me to do that. So that's how I got into, I would love to next go into installation work. Maybe will happen. I just had to show up in Seattle, getting there pretty close, but doing installation work. So I'm looking, so of course Theaster Gates is a huge influence, not just in the forms, but in the concepts of why I make art.
Could you explain that term for
Sure.
us? Yeah.
So the concept, formally he does so many things, so I can't, he's a installation artist, he's a potter, he does performances, he is a social practice artist, he has dinners, food and buildings are part of his medium. But his philosophy is that it takes the material to talk about or to understand the immaterial, and also that the hand is really important, that the process of making things, the process of building, the process of labor informs you in such a way. It gives you a kind of acuity, of wisdom. And so the hand is really important for me. And so Theaster Gates has given me articulation of why that it's important. He has this pedagogy of the hand he calls freaking the pot, like he's a potter. So, you have to make 10,000 pots in order to get that handle right. So that practice is just as important and vibrant in being an artist. So formally and conceptually, I love the work of Howardena Pindell. She was a Black artist in the Black artist movement in the 70s and only now coming to light. And she uses, again, the circular. In her early work, she used the circle as a concept of, again, of not only the organic, but the ritual cutting and making and using that to kind of refer to more African ritualistic cutting and the process of making. So I'm very much informed by her work, and also the installations of Ella Tsui from Ghana/Nigeria. Leonardo Drew, a New York artist. I love the LA artist Lauren Halsey, who incorporates community in her work. And I love the installations of Sheila Hicks, and then the earlier female artists like Louise Bourgeois and Eva Hesse, and their understanding of the domestic and the hand building are just as necessary in their artworks.
Yeah. Yes. There's nothing new under the sun, in a way, I have found as an artist, right? We are taking from all that we have experienced. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's the same thing with theology. It's, theologians are in conversation with other theologians, usually dead ones. But so, and in the same way, artists, I'm always in conversation, visual conversation. And we have to, I make my students kind of have to recognize who are they in visually and conceptually in conversation with when they're creating their thesis project, because we don't create out of a vacuum. We have to acknowledge that our creativity is borrowed and stolen. and I mean, even, when we think about our colonial past, I mean, literally stolen. So these things we have to be aware of, and the nature of art.
Heard the phrase, the most creative person is the one who hides his or her sources the best.
Oh boy, I don't know. Yeah, that's we can unpack that one.
Let's end with this, which I think is a really important question,
Mhm.
is why is art important to people of faith, or why should it be important to people of faith? Um, I recently read an article by the president there at the institution near Moody. Um, and he was talking about how the church sometimes discourages artists by, always wanting art to be celebratory, or always wanting art to be clear in its what it is and what it's trying to accomplish, not paying artists very well. Those he created this pretty long list of things. Um, why is it important to the church, or why is it important to people of faith that they encounter art, experience art, or maybe even make art?
Oh man, it will take all day for me to answer that question. I just did a workshop with pastors, 8 pastors about a year ago.
Did
And
you? Yeah.
yes, it was my covert way of getting pastors to experience art making. Because you can know about art, right? But to experience making it and experience, learn how to look at it, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
All 8 artists at the end, I had to interview them, were amazed that they were creative. They didn't, they thought creativity is in the realm of the artist. And so for them, it gave them a creative voice that they didn't know that they had. And by doing so, it empowered them to let others have that same creative voice. So that is number one reason why.
Okay.
I mean, that's why it should be in our seminary. Seminarians should be learning how to not only address that creative voice, but unleash it within
Yes.
the congregations. Um,
They found that they had a creative voice, but I'll push on this button.
yeah.
Why is it important for a person of faith to know
Mhm.
that they are a creative person or have a creative voice?
Because art, like the scriptures, and the scriptures is a literature. It's a piece of
Yeah,
artwork.
it is.
Causes us to deeply reflect on our human estate. It helps us to remind us that we're human.
Yeah.
Um, and but it does so with exposed hope. So when we are in the midst of good art, uh, we want to respond in some way. It causes us to act. So art. So when we're in the middle of listening to good art or making good art, right now, I think it's one of the things that why we need it right now is that it builds resilience.
Builds resilience.
Yeah, it builds resilience. It reminds us that we are human,
Hmm.
and that we have, if you can make something, a product, like Gates says, it teaches it teaches us that, number one, that we have the capability to create, to make something out of the world, including a mess.
Hmm.
If you take, dirt from the ground and add some water and make it into a vessel, that informs you in a way that it doesn't take much to make a lot, to make something big and grand.
Hmm.
And so we need that. We need to remember. We need to be that muscle needs to be exercised, and that
Hmm.
has been long neglected in our Western world. Art programs are the first to be cut out of schools. The imagination has been,
Hmm.
that depletes the imagination, that depletes our creative ability and innovation.
Hmm.
And so we need the experience of making art to remind us to be human and remind us that we have agency.
Yes.
And it also is a form of communication, like it informs us of other people and other people. It allows us to have empathy, like if we read a story or if, see a dramatic act, play or something, that it puts us in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
And therefore we have to be transformed. The liturgy is a work of art the table, our Eucharist, our baptism were meant to be pieces of artwork that causes us to reflect on our state so that we can change.
Yeah.
These were dramatic acts that we do corporately to acknowledge where our brokenness
Mm.
amid God's love.
Yeah.
That is transformational. And
Yeah.
so these are all the reasons why we need art. We need art not to know about God, but to feel him and encounter God and one another
Yeah.
and the world that he created.
Well, you made me think of the painting, right? That you created. That's exactly, putting it back on the stream. That's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. This had a name, by the way. What do you remember the name of this particular
Not at
piece?
all. I do not
Well,
remember.
okay, no problem.
Probably, I don't know, the one and the many, probably something to that. I don't know.
Well, I'll ask a final question, just bringing it back to Spark and Echo and your place on the board and your leadership. We're thankful for that, Dr. Fee. Thank you for partnering with us for sure. What are some of your, what's a hope that you have for Spark and Echo moving into the future?
Wow. A hope that I have is that it could be a platform to all the things that I expressed about art
Yeah,
just
of course.
now. That Spark and Echo would be the platform for other people to experience that, and for other people to invest in it through creative works. It's a resource that I pointed to my students. So I think it's a wonderful resource for institutions, Christian institutions, professors.
Yeah.
I use it as a meditation, devotional time before classes. So I could see the potential of this being in educational institutions, but on the secular side, it is an investment in a literature
Hmm.
that historically artists have responded to,
Yes.
and so it needs to continue that long history of artists invoking a biblical imagination or a biblical worldview, or even expressing a view that might be different of you, but somehow there's something in the narrative or the story that is intriguing, that needs exploration. So even in a secular way, that here's a piece of Western art history, Western history that is important, and and artists are still need to respond to it, and we need the artists to respond to it, because it needs to be unpacked, and different dimensions of it need to be seen in different ways than what traditionally has been seen.
Yeah. Dr. Fee, thank you for your time. We're very
Yes.
appreciative, and I'll say it again. Thank you for your service to Spark and Echo Arts, and we're so glad to have you aboard. No pun intended. But blessings on you today and your beautiful art making, and the theology that comes so closely with it.
Thank you, Spark and Echo. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, blessings to you. Take care.
Bye.